One of our viewers asked, if you can't use black to get colors darker, what do you use? We have several options, and I want to show them to you now. Let's begin with the lightest color on the color wheel, yellow. Now if we add black into yellow, it turns it green. We have a video tutorial just about that. So what do you use? Well, one thing that you can do is refer back to your color wheel and think it through. No matter what color it is on the color wheel, you can always start darkening it by going to its complement. That's one way, and I want to show you this. So I'm going to start with yellow, as I said. So we start with yellow, and so I'll pull my yellow. This is my Hansa yellow light. It could be any yellow, it doesn't matter. And now I'm going to go to its complement. The complement of yellow, as we see on the color wheel, is violet, or I like to say purple. So I use the color called dioxazine purple with my oil paints. It is a very, very dark purple. Well, if I put that purple down right here, not right down in the yellow, but somewhere around on the palette, and right here's where I'll put it. Now watch what happens. If I take just a little bit, not much, just a little bit. Now this is very dark. It's about as dark as you can get. And the yellow, as far as hues go, is very, very much towards about as light as you can get. All right, now gradually add a little bit of that purple into the yellow. And we'll see we're after changing its value, getting it darker. You see, it doesn't take much to change it, but that still looks purple. Well, I'll just keep pulling a little bit of it into the yellow and into the yellow. And now you see it's beginning to look more like yellow, and I just wonder what kind of yellow that reminds our viewers of. The more of the yellow we pull into it, the more yellow it gets. And so what we're doing here is we're gradually changing that light yellow, the pure yellow, gradually changing it to a darker color. Now you see I have on the palette right over here yellow ochre, and you see how similar this is to yellow ochre. All right, so that means another option for darkening yellow would be to reach for yellow ochre. So let's do this. Now see, there are several options here. One thing I would like all of the viewers to realize is that there are many, many options for working with color. There are no real there are no real boxed-in rules, and if you use boxed-in rules and formulas for mixing your colors, you're going to miss out on a lot of discovery. So let's do that. Let's just show you how similar those are. Yellow ochre is a darker yellow, and so if we put yellow ochre here and mix it into this yellow, you see we get very much the same thing. All right, but you say, I want it darker than that. If you want it darker than that, two other methods you can use. One, we'll go back to the complement, and we see if we really want it a dark yellow, we'll put the complement down here. Now, if you'll notice what happens to color when it gets really, really dark, and what causes color to get dark is either adding more pigment to it, or if we're observing color in nature, if it's something that is a local color of yellow, such as a daffodil, you'll notice that when it goes into shadow, that yellow is going to change, and where it's in the deepest shadow, where it doesn't have any light on it, you really can't tell what color it is. But if you really observe what's happening in that yellow as it moves towards its complement or towards shadow, it sort of moves through the color wheel. This is just a little bit of a trick I can show you, where if the light is warm, then that color is going to move or going to become orange before it becomes dark. It's going to become oranger before it becomes dark. So what we can do, one thing that you can do is to reach for orange, reach for an orange that's on your palette. If you have an orange that's on your palette. Now, I don't keep cadmium orange, or I don't keep an orange in my palette. I have a light this is actually cadmium yellow deep, which is a yellow orange, and I have a red orange, which is a cadmium red light. So let's just put a little bit of, I'll just put this right here. Let's put just a little bit of orange there. Now, I'll add a little bit of this orange. Notice I'm coming around the color wheel. Add just a little of this back in, right in here. And then when I do that, you see it begins to feel like a dark yellow. Now, what is that similar to? If you look over here, I have another color that falls in the yellow range called raw sienna. And if you'll look, put this right here, that is very similar. If I added a little bit more red to it, that would be very similar to the raw sienna. So, now let's just mix a little bit of that yellow in the raw sienna here and show you. Let's put a little yellow down here, and we'll put a little raw sienna down right there. Now, if I continue this mixture where I have the orange mixed in it, continue that on into the complement, which is violet, we'll see it becoming more and more like we see in nature when something that's yellow falls into shadow. Now, sometimes you mix things on the palette and they don't look the same on the palette as they look on a canvas. Now, what I've done here is what I do when I'm doing a lot of studies like that. I simply primed a piece of cardstock here just to do studies on. If you want to know how to do that, if you like doing studies but you don't want to waste canvas and stuff like that, go to quick tip number 3, one of the first ones, among the first ones we did, and I'll show you how to gesso a cardstock so that you can have materials there to do studies on. You can also gesso, if you have sketchbooks, you can also gesso the pages in the sketchbooks and do these studies, which is a good way also of keeping a record of your studies. Anyway, so this is Hansel light, Hansel yellow light, and here it is when we would paint it, when we put it on the canvas surface. Now let's look at how it would gradate then in the value line, and so then I'll pick up here the next step. This is where I mix just a little bit, not much, but just a little bit of that purple in it, and you see there it goes, it feels very much like yellow ochre. And I put a little yellow ochre right down here just to show you. See, they feel very much alike. So if you only need to darken your yellow just a little bit, then yellow ochre is an option. Alright, let's go to the next step here, and then I darkened it a little bit more. And this is the one that I added the orange to. Let me add just a little bit more orange into that too. Oops, that was too much. There we go, right in there. Right in there. Alright, now this is the one I added the orange to, and you'll see, and you actually will see yellow doing something like this as it gets if the light is warm, as it's getting more and more into shadow. And you see that ends up being very much like the color raw sienna. Now, yellow ochre and raw sienna, in fact, most of the earth colors are going to vary according to the manufacturer. So you might get a tube of yellow ochre from Winsor & Newton and another tube of yellow ochre from say Gamblin, and they might be different colors of yellow ochre. So I would suggest that you find a brand you like and stick with that brand so that you can always depend upon your colors to do what you want them to do. Right, so this is what is that? That's the Winsor & Newton raw sienna, and here it is right there. You see how similar those are? Alright, now I'm going to take it that next step towards the real shadow color, and let's get just well, I'll just do it with my brush. Could do it either way. So with my brush, the next shadow color, and let's get just a little bit more of that yellow into it, right in there. I'm going to add a little bit more of that orange into it. Now that, not quite deep shadow yet, but very close to deep shadow. And we get this. Now that looks like very much like burnt umber. Now I just happen not to have any burnt umber to show you, but you can test that. You can see for yourself how very much like burnt umber. But the thing about burnt umber is it does tend to be more red, So if you really want to be real picky and split hairs about this, the color to the darkening color to go for would be the raw umber, and that's what I have right here, raw umber. And so I'll just put the raw umber right here, and you see raw umber in value is very close to the burnt umber. If I pull it on out, let's mix just a little bit of the Hansa yellow with that right here to see. Pull it on out like that, and you can see that it is not quite as red as the feeling of burnt umber. So now, if you really want to take it darker than that, and if you had an occlusion shadow that's absolutely black, you could actually use black at this point because it wouldn't interfere with the hue. So there is a use for black, but what we need to do is to think of black as not necessarily a value changer, but a color changer. Now, there's one other thing I want to show you here about the color yellow. The color yellow might lean a little bit more towards green, depending on the kind of yellow, like lemons often will. It depends on I guess it depends on what kind of lemon it is. But a lot of times lemons will lean a little bit more towards green. So what do you do in that case? Well, in that case, you still go for the complement to darken it. And I'll show you. Don't want to make this quick tip too long because I want you to get the principle. It's not you're taking notes. I did this and I did this and I did this. You're getting the principle of what to do with any color in order to change its value without using black. So I would still then go into I'd still begin with the complement. If the lemon is turning, or if the color is turning yellow as it moves into shadow, turning green, I'm sorry, as it moves into shadow, I would still begin with the complement. Let me get another paper towel in here. Okay, let's get just a little bit more yellow. We got a little stingy there. There we go, right in here. Now, what do we do here? Well, when it gets to this point right here, we would reach for a little, look what happens right over here. As it moves in this direction, it's picking up a little bit more blue, or it's picking up a little bit more green. So what I would do in that case is either use as the complement here a blue violet, or just pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue. And let's look at what happens when we do that. If we pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue and add into it, then it begins to give us that green. This is, okay, added a little bit too much, but you can see what I'm talking about there. Now, that I've got, then I'm going to do just a little bit here on the canvas to show you. Okay, here's the yellow again. Now, if I'm getting that yellow, I'm going to add just a little bit of the green, of that mixture right here. So you see, this is usually what what you would see happening to if the lemon tended to be more towards green, you'd see it moving more in that direction, and then it would begin to get a little bit greener, but then it began to get a little bit more neutral. And as it begins to get a little bit more neutral, then as it gets darker like that, then you would add a little bit more of the complement to it. So any color, any of the warm colors, of the lighter colors, can be darkened by beginning with their complement and then adjusting what's happening as it moves into the lighter versions of the shadow color or the darker color, adjusting by adding back in something that's on one side of the color wheel or the other that is in between the color and the complement, the original color and the complement. Now that's a principle. I could go all day. We could make a 2-hour video here where I go through every single color and show you how that principle works. But why don't you do that? All you need to do is to follow these simple steps. Begin with a single color. If you begin with yellow-orange, begin with yellow-orange. Now to darken yellow-orange, go for blue-violet first. A little bit at a time into the blue-violet. If it seems to be not feeling like yellow-orange, then go up here and pull a little bit of orange into it, just a little bit. So you can work that way by working the colors that are at the colors as they are the most saturated on the color wheel, or you can choose from the earth colors or from the other colors that you have. They're in that range. So if you were working with yellow orange, for example, still the raw sienna, it does lean more towards yellow orange. So you could actually darken the yellow orange with raw sienna. And then you could carry on that next step further to get it darker, add a little bit of the complement into raw sienna. So you have a lot of flexibility there where you don't have to use black at all. The only time black is when it's in the occlusion shadows. And all of the times, I think I'm pretty accurate in saying this. If you don't know what an occlusion shadow is, by the way, a little sidebar here. An occlusion shadow is any shadow where all the light has been shut out. So where one object is sitting next to another, there's a tiny occlusion shadow where they touch, where all the light has been shut out. And in those little shadows, whatever mixture that you put there that is the darkest dark is going to feel like black. So you could use a combination of two colors that are inherently dark. For example, alizarin crimson and a phthalo green, or alizarin crimson and Rembrandt viridian, and they will look black. So you could do that, or within those occlusion shadows, look maybe at just a little bit of black added to it after it gets this dark, where you can no longer read the original hue. So I would advise you, if you really want to pursue this, that you develop some color charts, just some mixing exercises using this principle, just like I've done here, and develop color charts that actually show those options and show how they change. And I think you'll see how it will actually liven up your painting when you change those values by using actual hues that are related to each other somehow on the color wheel, rather than just adding black. Hope you enjoyed this quick tip. If you have questions or a suggestion for a quick tip, leave us a comment right down here in the YouTube comment box. And take a trip over to DianeMinds.com and look at all the things we have there for you, including full-length video tutorials. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter so you'll always be informed of our latest adventures. And thanks for watching.